Hey guys, it's your favorite Dinobot here, and believe it or not, I did not expect that video to even hit 1K views. What if Paul unlocked Chimchar'S potential? So, here's what I decided to do. I decided to continue it, right? I'm gonna go through how I think Paul would have basically been if he actually got Chimchar'S Blaze and beat Ash in the Sinnoh League. But we're gonna change some things here. We're gonna I will make a little bit of a catch-up section, catching up with Ash here, as we will have Paul go to different regions, at least ahead of Ash, or at least, diverging their paths a little bit here. But just to kind of give you a heads up here, Ash is going to be struggling with his confidence issues. Yeah, he's going to have basically this whole confidence thing about him, that he doesn't feel like his training method is right, despite the fact that he's getting results here because of Paul. Paul was pretty much the ultimate testament to Ash's philosophy here, and well, he couldn't prove it on a much more public stage here. Also, we'll have this be Tobias's team right here, full of legendaries, and yeah, Paul beats him because he has a Blaze Powered Infernape, and we'll say that Paul's can at least assemble his best team for Tobias. Alright, so without further ado, I think we pretty much just covered everything here. Paul wins the Sinnoh League, but doesn't challenge the Elite Four because he feels like he's done enough. However, Paul's now at home with Reggie, and he's overlooking his Pokemon's training. Now, would Paul's training method be more ruthless, or would he, what's the word I'm looking for? Relax in the training a little bit, or at least, give a little bit of leeway. Now, I think at this time, with him pretty much having what he wants from Chimchar, or this Infernape that he pretty much kept here and got this ultimate super powered Blaze from, I do think he would have been a lot more chill, not as intense to really get power here. And he was able to beat Brandon in this timeline as well when he fought him, because we replaced Hariyama with a Blaze powered Monferno. Now, I do think Paul's Pokemon would be a whole lot stronger, like stronger than anything we've seen in the anime. Like, they've beaten Tobias's Pokemon, and they're a lot more sturdier, a lot more resistance to their weaknesses here. Basically, Paul would be around the same levels as some of the strongest Elite Fours. Yeah, I know it would actually be pretty crazy here. But we would actually see Paul and Reggie overlooking their training, while Reggie's kind of tending, to his own Pokemon, and maybe doing a little bit of training in secret here. But this is when Rourke arrives with a package that Reggie had ordered. As when he and Reggie both greet each other, they talk about the package that they ordered and tell him that it's a freshly new one, something that has, a very few moves here, but it can definitely learn more. And this is where we'll also see Reggie's second person, Reggie's second visitor here, Scott. And Paul would be shocked to see that Scott is here, and almost get hit with a Thunder from Electivire because Infernape dodged it, which would actually have like a little bit of comedic moment, because Paul did have some pretty funny moments here. But yeah, let's just get on with it, right? So Scott would actually be here to ask Paul if he wants to do the Battle Frontier, to which Reggie would then begin to explain to Paul that he called Scott here so that he could maybe mellow out a little bit, or at least learn something from this experience. And this is where he hands Paul the Pokeball, and Reggie tells him that this is going to be one of your newest additions to your team. You have to raise it with care. And this is where Paul simply lets the Pokemon out of his Pokeball, and it's revealed to be a Cranidos. Now, I know, you probably are thinking, Legendary, what's the play here? But let me explain here. Fossil Pokemon are some of the biggest testaments to any trainer's skill. They function differently than the average Pokemon. They think, they function, they attack differently. They nurture differently than the average Pokemon. And I actually think Paul, if I had to pick a fossil Pokemon, it was really between Tyrantrum and Cranidos here, and I didn't want to introduce Paul to a Tyrantrum just yet here. But I do think that Cranidos does fit here, and Scott would tell him that he's preparing him for the Battle Frontier. Or does Paul want a shot at the Battle Frontier? You know, basically asking him, hey, you get a rematch with Brandon on an official stage. But you have to remember, Brandon's not the same person you fought here. And I do think Paul would have accepted this and actually would think of Ash, that, you know, he was able to beat Brandon on this official Battle Frontier journey, albeit it took him 3 tries. So Paul takes with him a team of powerhouses. He has Torterra, Electivire, Infernape, and Frostlass, but does take Cranidos, as he does understand the valuability of being there for a younger Pokemon, just like he did with Chimchar, albeit a bit, obviously, you know, a bit differently here. Now, with the Battle Frontier here, we're actually going to do something a little more twisted with it. You see, Reggie and Scott are pretty much explaining how, you know, they went through the Sinnoh Battle Frontier, and it was a one-shot. You know, it was a one-shot thing. You know, if you lose that here, then, you know, you don't get as many chances as the Kanto one. To which Paul says he wants to do something way different. Something that Ash would never do. Or Ash had never done here. And this is where he decides he wants to fight both frontiers. Both Kanto and both Sinnoh. To which Scott and Reggie are both, like, shocked about this. So you want to fight all the frontier brains? To which Paul simply says, yes. And Scott is somewhat excited about this, but also concerned because, again, he's never, you know, had someone to actually want to fight both frontier, you know, both battle frontiers, both the Sinnoh and Kanto one. However, Paul says that he's got plenty of strong Pokemon and plenty of reserves that he has to, well, use at his disposal. To which Scott and Reggie both don't like how he puts this, but they understand what he's saying. So this is where we would have Paul travel to Kanto and, you know, go to his first battle frontier location, which would be the battle factory, right? So Paul would arrive here, and Nolan would actually be just chilling, talking with his referee. And this is where they notice Paul. Paul and, well, Reggie kind of just get down to business immediately, and he pretty much tells Nolan that he wants nothing more than his strongest Pokemon. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And Nolan begins to explain the rules, that it'll be a one-on-one battle, meaning if you lose, that's it. No substitutions, no nothing. And Paul is not bothered by this, not even scared in the slightest. And Nolan simply throws out his Pokeball, and, well, obviously, it would be Articuno. It's still one of Nolan's strongest till this very day. I mean, why not, right? I don't think a lot of people would have chose Articuno, but it is what it is here. But Paul, on the other hand, decides to kind of analyze it a little bit. He knows that Torterra is at a type disadvantage. He knows that Cranidos isn't as experienced, and he knows that Infernape is also at a type disadvantage, but with a semi-advantage in his fire types. While he could use Blaze, he knows Articuno's speed is going to be a problem. And again, thinking about how Cranidos is a little less inexperienced, and Frostlass could drag out the battle to the point where Nolan might be able to capitalize on it. So he goes with his only and his best choice, his best fighter, Electivire. Electivire stands by, ready for battle against Nolan's Articuno, with Paul telling him that this is going to be his chance to prove just how powerful he really is. To which Electivire is excited for this, just pumped up and ready to basically throw down with this whole legendary bird here. Now, we would go into the stands and we would see Scott and Reggie pretty much talk about, you know, Paul's experiences over the years, and Reggie would say that he is kind of disappointed in how Paul never really, you know, changed his methods, but he can't lie that his methods still yield results. Now, to the battle itself here, it starts off with Articuno going for a Blizzard and Electivire countering immediately with a Thunder. This goes back and forth a little bit until Nolan changes it to an Icicle shard, to an Ice Shard, or excuse me, an Icicle Crash. And Paul tells Electivire to protect almost immediately here. He then tries to hit another Thunder, but Articuno simply evades it, but does land a powerful Ice Beam. Now, this is where Electivire is able to then successfully land a Thunder after tanking the Ice Beam. However, Paul knows he can't really use a tank and attack method for Electivire. It just doesn't work unless static is inflicted here, especially with Articuno still being a long-range fighter. However, this is where his prayers, or at least his hopes, are at least answered here when Articuno and Electivire get into a Thunder Punch and Steel Wing collision here. The both of these moves collide here, and he is pretty much thinking on how he can pretty much get Articuno wrapped up in a Thunder, or at least being able to restrain Articuno for Electivire to pretty much just end it right then and there. Articuno then goes in for another Steel Wing, which Electivire actually outmaneuvers this time and lands a Brick Break on Paul's command. To which Scott notes that it's not a very effective move against flying types. However, Reggie then states that Paul knew that, but he used it for a reason. And I do think that, Reggie would definitely see what Paul is planning here. I mean, it's his younger brother. He's known him and seen him possibly even train his Pokemon ruthlessly and aggressively. But, we can kind of just keep it going here with pretty much Articuno going in for a Steel Wing and Electivire this time just going in for a double Brick Break. However, it uses it to catch the wings. Yeah, I know, crazy, right? He catches the wings like a very certain alternate timeline version of himself. He then wraps his tails around Articuno's wings here, and this is where we actually see a different play here. Paul tells Electivire to basically deploy a flurry of Thunder Punches here. However, when Electivire connects here, one of his punches change into a Fire Punch. This is about to land, but Nolan is able to at least give one final order to Articuno to maybe get some lasting damage in, and it's an Ice Beam. So basically, the Fire Punch has to travel through the Ice Beam in order to connect to Articuno here, and it successfully does. And when the smoke clears, I think it's kind of obvious. Paul has won. Electivire has won. Albeit it does take to one knee here, it is still able to battle, and it does give off that triumphant battle cry like it always does here. This fills Paul with confidence. It fills Paul with pretty much overconfidence at this point, I should really say here, because again, he previously beat Brandon, he beat Tobias, and now he's beaten Nolan. That's people with a whole lot of legendaries, and I think Paul would feel unstoppable at this point. Like I think it would kind of be reflected in his attitude. Now, yes, Paul would still be respectful to those who give him, the gym badges and stuff like that. But again, or the frontier symbols, excuse me. But again, his confidence has skyrocketed to basically the highest of levels here. And I think this would be reflected in his training here. He would, again, take his training very seriously here. But again, he would see Infernape using Blaze against Cranidos here. And think about, again, his matches with Ash, Tobias, and whatever challenger that simply came his way. Brandon as well. And he would be filled with nothing more than pride. Infernape was the pinnacle of his achievements. Yes, he had Electivire and Torterra, but it was Infernape, the perfect specimen to basically his testament that his training method is far superior to anyone's. Now, we would still see some other training with Frostlass, Torterra, and everyone else here. But again, Paul would be kind of dead set on Infernape, as it's still the prodigy, the pinnacle of what he's achieved. And in all honesty, it is still his greatest accomplishment. Turning a Pokemon that's been fragile and weak into something that is just monstrous, undeniably way more powerful than any fire type on the planet. And again, keep in mind, his Pokemon would basically be like 10 times stronger than Charizard if he spent 10 years in the Pacific Valley without coming back to Ash, like non-stop training in the hyperbolic time chamber, all right? But we would then have Paul simply retract all his Pokemon, get them medical attention from Nurse Joy, or if Reggie, wants to. But I think Reggie would probably have a professional heal them up here. And this is where they would actually go to the Battle Dojo or the Battle Arena with Greta here, the next Frontier Brain. Now, I'm just going to keep Greta pretty simple how she was in the original anime. Greta is pretty much excited to greet Paul, and she's heard so much about him. And again, since Paul's won a Sinnoh League, he's pretty well known for his power. So Greta states that she's not going to hold anything back against him, and, well, uses her same two Pokemon from last time. Now again, originally I thought about having Paul just recall Honchkrow and then having him and Infernape team up, but I'm just going to kind of leave it here between Infernape and Cranidos. Two Pokemon that are honestly pretty similar. But again, there is going to be shown just how dangerous they are when the match begins here. Metachan will start off with a Focus Punch, but Infernape, not using Blaze by the way, manages to not only, counter it with a Mach Punch, but straight up overpowers Greta's Metachan like it's nothing. This is where we then see Hariyama try to come in with an arm thrust. However, Cranidos is on it immediately, saving one of its new family members with a Zen Headbutt. And, well, it's pretty effective. It's a psychic type move that I actually had to find this out for myself here. It's a psychic type move. That's pretty effective against fighting types. So again, Hariyama takes a lot more damage than Metachan. This is where Metachan actually tries to go for an Ice Punch on Cranidos. However, Infernape intercepts it with a Flare Blitz. This not only knocks Metachan back into Hariyama, but since they're both connected to each other, the burn sets off, engulfing both of them. This is where Hariyama tries to go in for a Focus Punch, but both of them move out of the way and he misses it. This is where Cranidos goes in for a Head Smash and then follows it up with an Earthquake, taught to him by Torterra. So yeah, Cranidos is proving to be a little bit of a prodigy right now. And this is where Greta decides that she's going to have to at least get one of her Pokemon out of here, because again, she's on the back foot for a large majority of this matchup here. So she chooses to have Hariyama sacrifice itself by pretty much using its one non-damaged arm to throw Metachan into the air so it can get a high jump kick. Now that Hariyama has pretty much fallen to the Earthquake and Zen or Head Smash and Earthquake combination, yeah, this then just leaves Metachan trying to do a high jump kick, to which Paul calls for a double flamethrower. And as both Cranidos and Infernape, who taught him Flamethrower, pretty much go on to not only combine their flames and begin to push against Metachan, but Metachan is actually trying its best to break through. To which I definitely could see Greta calling for bulk ups repeatedly with the high jump kick in order to try and push the flames back, but is doing so just barely. Paul, wanting to end this now before the bulk ups become too much, tells Infernape to wrap it up with a blaze-powered flamethrower. They both would still continue to flamethrower, it's just that Infernape now adds a bit more juice to it, pretty much sending Metachan crashing into the ceiling and scorched pretty badly. Greta is somewhat shocked and horrified, but again, she still gives Paul her symbol while pretty much returning her Pokemon and scurrying off to find the closest Pokemon Center here. And Paul, once again, would be filled with pride. And I don't think this time Reggie wouldn't blame him this time though. Because again, Greta was far easier than he expected. Even congratulating Paul on how fast he managed to grow Cranidos' power to a level reasonable enough to be able to compete with Elite Four members. We would then fast forward, let's say a couple hours later, and Paul decides to trade in Electivire for his Magmortar. Letting out Magmortar, he lets him out alongside Torterra, Frostlass, and Infernape to actually help train Cranidos in its endurance. And Cranidos will be running at them as they shoot their attacks with a head smash. And that's where we're going to leave it off here, you guys. Please comment down below, like and subscribe and share it with your friends. And I'm actually kind of curious, what other region would you guys like Paul to go to? Will Paul get humbled during this series? And again, who do you guys want to be the one to humble Paul? Should it be Brandon, Reggie, or somebody else? But let me know what you guys think down below. Please comment, like, and subscribe and share with your friends. This is Legendary Grimlock, and I hope y'all have a blessed day. And I'm sorry I didn't wish this to y'all before, but I hope y'all had a happy Easter. Peace.